Let's solve a trig equation using substitution. Here we have 2 sine squared x plus the cosine of x equal to 1. And note that we have a sine and a cosine. It's probably better that we get it all in terms of the cosine. We can do that by substituting in the Pythagorean identity for sine squared x. So write this as 2 times the quantity, 1 minus the cosine squared of x, plus cosine of x, and that being equal to 1. Once we clean everything up, move everything to the right, we have the equation 0 is equal to 2 cosine squared x minus the cosine of x minus 1. We now have a trig equation that is quadratic in form. And you could use a quick substitution step here if you like. We're just going to go ahead and factor it in terms of the cosine. We'll have 2 cosine of x plus 1 times the quantity cosine of x minus 1. We'll now break this up into 2 trig equations and solve for the cosine itself. And from this we'll come up with the cosine of x equaling a negative 1/2 from our first factor. And then our second factor will be the cosine of x set equal to 1. And again, we just took 2 cosine x plus 1, set it equal to 0, solved for the cosine, did a similar thing with the cosine of x minus 1. Now we have to focus our attention on these 2 mini trig equations. Cosine of x is equal to a negative 1/2. Note that our cosine is negative. And we know that this happens in quadrant 2, and this also happens in quadrant 3. So we have to discuss those 2 individual cases. Now, when the cosine is equal to a negative 1/2, we have a reference angle of pi thirds. And in quadrant 2, that will give us a value of 2 pi thirds. As before, addressing the periodicity, 2 pi n. Quadrant 3, in a similar fashion, using what we know about reference angles, we obtain 4 pi thirds plus 2 pi n. Now let's look at the cosine of x. The cosine of x is equal to 1 at one point, x equals 0 radians, plus, again, addressing the periodicity of 2 pi n. Note that any n value other than 0 will take our solutions outside the interval, so we can plug in n equals 0 into all 3 of these. And from our potential solutions, we come up with the following. X is equal to 2 pi thirds, 4 pi thirds, and then finally 0. So these are the 3 solutions for our trig equation.